Good evening, everyone. Thank you once again for joining me for the Thursday evening look into the Holy Book Devotional, and I am your host, Charles Logan. Now, this is a devotional that I first shared on April 20th of 2023, which I called Suffer the Little Children. Now, I thought it appropriate to look at it again since our church is presently hosting a vacation Bible school for over 100 children. I'm proud of my church because each year a congregation of seniors whose average age is in the 70s for 1 week shares the story of Jesus with children whose ages range from, I don't know, 5, 6 to 12 or so. And while it's hard work for people of our age, we still feel that children are our greatest resource and precious gift. And this is one reason that I'm so angry about a statement that was recently made by a so-called Reverend Dr. Rebecca Todd Peters, who's affiliated with the Presbyterian Church USA. Now I'm going to repeat her statement, but I almost choke on the words because they're so blasphemous. Here's what she said. If Jesus were giving his sermon today, he might have said, "Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness." Now, this woman should be forever banned from getting anywhere near a pulpit, in my opinion. We know that Jesus would never have said anything like that because he loved children. He believed that they deserved to be cherished, cared for, and protected. He even compared himself to the natural innocence of a child and their relationship to their father when he said these words from Mark 9:36 to 37. He took a child and placed him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child, such child in my name receives me, and whosoever receives me receives not me, but he who sent me." So our time this evening will be about Jesus and how he wants us to treat our children. By our modern way of thinking, the ancients treated their children terribly. It really did not matter which culture you look at. None of them treated their children as the blessed gifts from God as we view them today. Admittedly, my generation is long past having any influence on our own children, other than to pray that they have taken something from the moral teachings of honor and respect that we tried to instill in them years ago. We look at our grandchildren and search for evidence of these things that we taught our children long ago and hope that we have had some vicarious influence on those who will eventually go out and make their mark on the world. For those of us whose parents were faithful Christians and churchgoers, I know that their hope was that we would make our mark on the world, having been brought up as believers and allowing our training and upbringing to influence the lifetime decisions that we make, not only for ourselves, but for those we may encounter during our lifetime, through business relations, social, and recreational encounters. And I think about my mother in particular, and she and my father would always take all 5 of us children to church every Sunday. I'm sure that she looked like a mother duck with all of her little ducklings following all in a row. She brought us up in the Word, prayers at meals, and respect for authority. And those who were older than us. Mom went on to be with the Lord in 1997, but and sadly, I was ordained into the gospel ministry before she passed away. And I know that she would have been very proud of that life decision. Now, the Bible verse that our look into the Holy Book devotional will focus on this evening is in Matthew 19, starting with verse 13. It goes like this: Then little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked him. But Jesus said, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed from there. Now, everything that Jesus did in his earthly ministry brought a new perspective to old traditions. Culturally, children were treated as property, more than a blessing to the family. More surviving children meant help in providing for the family and caring for and feeding the family. There was little or no education except for that given by the parents, and then only for the survival of the family. It was not unheard of that the head of the household would use his children and even his wife sometimes as collateral for a loan. In other cultured societies of the day were no much better. The Greeks did not consider children to be people until after the 5th day. If for some reason they were not satisfied with the child, they could abandon them to die. If someone were to adopt them, they would become a slave. Now, children in Rome were mostly slaves because a great part of the populace were slaves. Roman children began working in the father's trade at an early age, and girls married right out of puberty. Those marriages were generally arranged with little thought for feelings of the children involved. Now, the children of ancient Egyptians fared slightly better. Boys learned farming or their family's trade. The girls were brought up learning about domestic things. Of course, the wealthy in any culture had it much better off as far as education was concerned. Of course, there were the extremes like the Spartans who gave up their boys at age 7 to the state where they would begin training as a warrior. The weak, maimed, or just unwanted were left to die. Now, Jesus felt that children were a very special part of society. He saw them as uncluttered with the problems of the day, untethered with the prejudices and ethnic hatreds. He saw them as innocent, and as such he felt that they should be sheltered and protected beyond the traditional feelings of the day. Here is what he told his disciples in Matthew 18:3 and 4. Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Now, in the times that we live in today, many children around the world are suffering, whether it be from poverty, war, a political system that does not look upon children as an asset, or radical religious beliefs that inhibit them from expressing themselves like children, or just unloved and unwanted. But in our own minds, we are far beyond that ill respect for children. Yet even today, we are subjecting our children to influences that will have an adverse effect on them as they grow up. Oh, we think that we have one of the best educational systems in the free world. Advanced education that is comparable to any other free country, if one can afford it, that is. We pride ourselves in learning from the social and ideological failures of other nations in the past, while improving on our own. Aren't we fortunate to be so special and sophisticated and so far ahead intellectually to be able to provide our children with the proper education to prepare them for a productive career in the future? Or are we really? Are we loving our children enough to give them the proper moral teachings while at the same time instilling a respect for authority and a good work ethic so that they can be productive and independent when they're on their own? We have all seen some things that trouble us deeply about what our children are being exposed to today, and especially in the name of inclusion and acceptance. Some time ago, I read in the news an article that announced a drag queen parade in Los Angeles to protest the laws that are being enacted across the country that prohibit children from being exposed to immoral and sexually deprived events. And get this, it was planned for Easter morning. Those adult shows actually promote young children to question their own sexuality and moral teachings. Now, thank goodness there are people who recognize this as a serious threat to our children. They know that they need to grow up as children, enjoying the things that children enjoy in a setting that is free from the influence of misguided adults who hide a nefarious agenda even from the children's parents. Now, I'm sure that when the progressive movement began several generations ago, when all talk of God and prayer was removed from schools, that Jesus cried to see children being used as objects in an expanding liberal agenda. You know, it's really frightening to look back on examples of off-the-rails regimes that substitute freedom with political ideologies that have no room for God or Christianity or any moral religious teachings for that fact. And it's scary to see how they use the education of innocent, impressionable children to further their radical agendas. Now take the contemporary example of communist China. Since the Cultural Revolution, the state controls all aspects of education. There is no difference between educating children and filling children with propaganda. They teach them a trade so that they can properly support the new order and idealism. If they never know that what freedom is, they will never miss it. And God has been replaced with faith in the state. In Germany, the Nazis took the children, placed them in educational centers, and indoctrinated them in believing that Hitler and Germany were their saviors, and taught women to be good mothers for the Aryan state. Indoctrination was the key feature in those radical regimes, and they used the children to promote those radical ideas without question. But we are immune to all of that propaganda and indoctrination, aren't we? I know that there are some wonderful, God-fearing teachers in our school system today. Teachers that love their children like their own children and consider it a privilege to be part of their life-changing experiences. But there are those who have those precious lives in their care that brag about being able to indoctrinate these young minds with radical hatred and expose them to vulgar influences at the young age of 6 and 7. They gloat about flaunting their transsexuality while all the while keeping their teaching agenda secret from the children's parents. You know, there are actually people in our federal government that are promoting this new agenda and offering federal funds to support sexual reassignment surgeries for children who only want to be and act like children. You know, I have to believe that Jesus, the same Jesus who said, "Let the little children come to me and do not forbid them," is weeping to see how instead of suffering the children to come to those that they trust, they are suffering because of the ones that they trust. Now, Jesus had some very stern words for those who break that trust for children. It's found in Matthew 18:6. It says, "If anyone causes one of these little ones to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the sea." You know, it's ironic that these words from Scripture have been branded hate speech from advocates of those who favor exposing children to vulgar and hateful things in the name of inclusion and acceptance. It's even more frightening that some in our federal government have indicated their support for this new order of acceptance and inclusion. You know, I'm thankful for the parents like the ones that raised me. Oh, I gave them lots of gray hairs, but they were responsible for the way that I live today. I was punished when I was rebellious, but complimented when I was good. I'm thankful for that punishment because I know that it helped me to be a better and more responsible person, and admittedly, I deserved it. Proverbs 13:24 says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children disciplines them." Certainly that goes against all the current philosophy about giving children the choice of learning good from bad on their own. It is the same philosophy that says let them choose to go to church or choose a religion if they want. Like I say, we are, for the most part, done with that influence that we can have on our own children. We pray that they will live by the way we tried to raise them. And I still believe that what was written in Proverbs 22:6 still applies today. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." You know, we can still make a difference, though, with our grandchildren because we can be an example of the Christ-like in people. And one final thought. In Psalm 139, verses 13 to 16, David writes these words, "For you formed my inner parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelously are your works that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lower parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as ye were, there were none of them." And yet, in our enlightened, self-sustaining intellect, we as a society have far surpassed the numbers of children that ancient societies sacrificed to the profanity of their pagan gods by sacrificing our own unborn to the gods of post-modernistic cultural ideology. You know, God will hold us accountable. So I just want to share with you one final thought. You know, I've always considered it a privilege and an honor to share this time with all of you. I've been doing this for about 5 years, and you know, I'm getting a little bit tired. And I want you to let me know your thoughts about continuing these live videos. Please share your thoughts in the comments, and once again, I am honored to be your host for the Look into the Holy Book Devotional, and Lord willing, we'll be able to share some time together next Thursday. But until then, I wish each and every one a very pleasant week to come, and may God bless each and every one of you. And I will say good night.